Hi guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along to one of my early spring patterns, pattern 9234, the jumpsuit. Let's get started. All right guys, we're going to be working on 9234. I'm going to be doing view B for this sew along, which is my sleeveless version. Now on the back of the pattern envelope, as usual, you get a list of suggested fabrics. This has a lot of options. You can use a denim, you can use laundered cottons, you can use linens, poplins, sateen, really any stretch woven would really work great for this. I'm going to be doing a stretch corduroy, which I think is going to be really nice. It also lets you know that you need some lightweight interfacing, and you're also going to need a zipper. Okay, so let's go through all of the pieces you're going to need to cut. You're going to need to cut pattern piece number 12. This is our front facing. You're going to be cutting 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. You're going to be cutting out 1 of the back facing. This is cut on the fold. You're cutting 1 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. You're going to be cutting out pattern piece number 14. This is our fly. You're going to be cutting 1 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 8, which is our pocket facing. Now, depending on your fabric choice, if it's too thick, I would suggest using a lining fabric for this, like I'm going to be doing. You're going to be cutting out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 2. This is our bodice side front, and you're going to be cutting 2. Pattern piece number 1 is our bodice front. You're going to be cutting out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 3, which is our bodice back. You're going to cut 1 on the fold. Then we have pattern piece number 4. This is our bodice side back. You're going to be cutting out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 9. This is our pocket yoke and pocket. You're going to be cutting out 2. Pattern piece number 15 is the underlap. You're going to be cutting out 1 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 10, which is the back pants. And then you're going to cut out pattern piece number 1, which is the front pant. You're going to cut 2 of each. All right, once you have everything cut and interfaced, we can start sewing. If you are making the sleeve version, you're going to need to cut out pattern piece number 5, which is our sleeve. You're going to cut 2. And you're going to cut out pattern piece number 6, which is the sleeve band. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Okay, you're going to cut out pattern piece number 11, which is our carrier. Now, I will show you how to do the belt in another video, but for this sew along, we will not be making the belt. Okay, we're going to start with some stay stitching. So I want you to go to your machine, and I want you to stay stitch the front neck edge, and I also want you to stay stitch between your notches. Then you're also going to take the back piece, and you're going to stay stitch, always starting in the center, working your way out, and then you're going to stay stitch down. Okay, we're going to start with our side front and our front. We're going to go ahead and place them right sides facing. You always want to make sure that you're pinning at your notches first. So I'm going to pin there and there. I'm going to pin at the bottom. And then you want to make sure that you pin where your dot is. So you should have a dot marking on both pieces. You want to make sure that that's matched up. And I'm going to pin there because that's where we're going to stop stitching. Now we're going to need to ease this part onto the bodice side. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a couple of snips, just like that. And that way, as you're sewing, this will stretch on and it will help ease that little portion in. Now you're going to pin your other side front and front the same way. You're going to head to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch from your dot all the way down, back stitching at the beginning and at the end. Now you're going to go ahead and pin your other side front and front together the same way, and you're going to head to your sewing machine. Starting at the bottom, you're going to stitch, back stitch, and you're going to go up and stop at the dot. Make sure and back stitch both at the start and at the finish. You're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you've stitched your side front to your front, you can go ahead and serge your raw edges and then press your seam towards the center front. Then go ahead and set this aside. You're going to grab your back, side back, and your back, and you're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to right sides facing, align that double notch that you see there. Go ahead and pin. You're going to pin again at the bottom. And then just like before, you should have a dot on both sides. So you want to first make sure that both of those dots are aligned. So a quick way to check is just to push your pin through one side. Make sure it matches on the other end. You're gonna pin your other side back the same way. And then just like we did, you're gonna stitch starting at the bottom, back stitch, work your way up, back stitching at the dot to reinforce. You're gonna do the same thing for both sides. Okay, now that we have our backs sewn together and we also have both of our fronts sewn, we're gonna go ahead and set this aside for just a second. We're gonna work on our carriers. Okay, you're gonna go ahead and grab your carrier. You're going to fold both sides to the inside so that they meet in the middle like this. Go ahead and press it if you need to, and then you're going to fold over again, and you're going to sew along the very edge. Okay, so I'm just going to do this with the machine. I'm gonna fold so that it meets in the middle, and then I'm going to fold onto itself. Okay, now you're gonna go ahead and grab your carriers. You should cut them into 4s. Each one measures 4 inches. You're gonna go ahead and place 2 on the back, and then you're going to place 1 on each front, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to turn under the raw edge at the very top, and you're going to stitch that down at the dot. Now for the bottom edge, you're just gonna align it to the raw edge of the bodice, and you're going to stitch across where you see your dot. You're gonna do that for all 4 carriers. Once we have our carriers sewn in, we're gonna go ahead and attach front to back at the shoulders. So with right sides facing, you're gonna go ahead and pin at the shoulder, match your notches. I'm just gonna pin once at the shoulder where the notch is. Okay, now set this aside for a second, grab your facings. You're gonna do the same exact thing, okay? So front to back, right sides facing, stitch across the shoulders on both your facings and your bodice using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now that we have our facings and our bodice sewn together at the shoulders, we're gonna go ahead and place our facing, right sides facing over our bodice, and we're going to pin this in place. So I'm gonna start first in the back. Now I have finished off the raw edge of my facing. You could do this either by serging it or by turning under 1/4 of an inch, but my fabric is a corduroy and I don't want to add too much bulk, so I just did some serging around my raw edges. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue pinning along the neckline and the shoulder. You want to match up your shoulder seams. Okay, so 2 things to note here. Once you have your entire front and back neckline all pinned, you're also going to pin your armscye only if you are doing the sleeveless version like I am, okay? If you are not doing the sleeveless version, you are going to just stitch around the neck. You're going to leave your armscye loose, okay? So because I'm going to be doing the sleeveless version, I'm going to go ahead and continue pinning along my armscye. Once you have everything in place, you're going to head to your sewing machine. We're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around our neckline. You're going to get to your dot, you're going to pivot, you're going to pivot at your dot, you're going to continue. If again you're doing the sleeveless version like I am, you're also going to stitch across your armscye from one end to the other. You're going to do both sides the same way. Okay, so as you can see, I have stitched along my facings, I pivoted at my corners here, and because I'm doing the sleeveless version, I have stitched around my armscye as well. Now I'm gonna go ahead and trim much of this. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clip into my corners. You're gonna clip all the way up until you get to your dot, okay? Don't cut through your stitching. And now go ahead and trim off your seam allowance. Okay, once you've trimmed your seam allowance and you've clipped into your corners, you're gonna go ahead and turn this out. Now, if you are doing the sleeve version, then this is much easier. You just need to turn your facing to the right side. If you are doing the sleeveless version like I am, then you're going to need to take your front side through your shoulder and outside to bring it to the front, okay? So the easiest way is just to go slowly. The thinner your fabric choice is, the easier this will be. In my case, I'm using a corduroy, so I might need to play a bit more with this as I pull it through, but just go slowly. You want to pull your entire piece through here and out to the right side. Okay, once you've turned your piece right side out, what you're going to do now is, if you're doing the sleeveless version like I am, we're gonna go ahead and align that underarm seam, and we're going to pin there, and then pin your facing at the side seam together, and then along the side seam of the bodice. You're going to do that for both sides. You're gonna go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from your facing all the way down. Now, if you're doing the sleeve version, then you would not have turned out that allowance, and instead you're just going to be stitching together through all layers. Okay, once you have stitched your side seams together, we're gonna go ahead and set our bodice aside, and we're gonna grab our pant front and our pocket. Go ahead and grab your front pant and your pocket bag, unless you're using, like I said, the same fabric. I'm using a thinner fabric just because I wanna make sure that it's not super bulky. So I'm gonna go ahead and align my notch. Okay, I'm gonna pin the other one the same way. Now you're gonna head over to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna do that for both fronts and both pocket bags. All right, so once you have gone ahead and stitched it down, you should understitch like usual. I went ahead and top stitched. This is optional. I just wanted my lining, since it's very thin, to stay to the inside. Even with understitching, sometimes it can peek, and so I just went ahead and top stitched. Now you're gonna take your pocket yoke and you're going to place it over the top. You're going to match your notches, okay, and pin there first. You should have 2 double notches. And then pin along the rest, just your lining in your pocket. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna head to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch both of these together. I like to start here and work my way around the curve and out the side. So I have already done one so you guys could see. So I've gone ahead and stitched my pockets together. So on the right side, you see the yoke. Now, a question in case you're wondering why I use the nude lining for my pocket. Whenever I work with white fabric, I don't like for the lining to be visible on the right side of my fabric, right, on the garment. So I always use a nude lining because that way you won't see it. If you use a white lining, which I guess you could assume you would use, if you're using white fabric, you would use white lining. You will definitely see it on the right side. So that's just a little trick that I've been doing for many, many years. Anytime I sew with anything white, I always use a nude lining as opposed to white. So now what you're gonna do is you're going to stitch across the top and you're going to stitch across the bottom to secure this in place. You can do both your pockets the same way for your fronts. Then you're gonna go ahead and grab your back pattern pieces, and you should have a dart in the back of your pant. So you're gonna go ahead, pin that out and make your dart. I want you to make your dart on both of your back pant legs. So you guys should have finished off both of your fronts so that you have your yokes done and your pockets done. You can set your front aside for just a second. And I have gone ahead and done the darts in my back of the my back pant. And also I placed my back pant legs right sides facing, and I stitched my center backs together. I also went ahead and serged. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to pin our front leg to our back leg at the side seams. So I've got one front and one back, and we're going to pin along the entire side seam. You should have a notch here. Okay, I want you to pin your other front leg to the back leg the same way. Remember, right sides are facing, and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from the top down to the bottom. Make sure to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. You're going to do both of your front legs the same way. You are going to leave your center front unstitched, okay? So we're only attaching side seams. Okay, once you have your side seam sewn, we're going to go ahead, open this out, and we're going to attach this to the bodice. So I'm going to go ahead and place my center back notches. You should have 2 notches in the back. Go ahead and align those. And then go ahead and align your side seams. Once you have everything pinned, go ahead to your sewing machine, and I like to start in the center and work my way in one direction and then start back at the center and work my way in the other direction. So you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. All right guys, so as you can see, I have stitched it together, and I've also gone ahead and serged my raw edges. I also went ahead and serged along the entire center front after attaching them together. Now we're gonna start working on our fly. So I'm gonna turn this so that the right sides are facing each other. And we're going to stitch part of our crotch. Okay, so the front pant legs are facing each other. I'm gonna go ahead and pin, and then I'm gonna pin again, matching that notch. You should have a notch there. And then I'm gonna pin at the dot. So you should have marked a dot. So you're gonna stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from your inseam to your dot, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. All right, I've gone ahead and stitched part of my crotch. I'm gonna turn this to the right side. Okay, now that I have this right side facing me, right, I'm gonna go ahead and pin my fly to my center front. Now on the very top of your fly, I want you to press down 5/8 of an inch, okay? And then you're gonna go ahead and place that, open out your fly. You're gonna place it along that seam line. And I'm gonna go ahead and pin. You should also have a notch that you're going to match up. And then continue pinning. And then I'm gonna put a pin at my dot. So you should have a dot on your fly where it matches up to that dot where you stopped stitching at the crotch. So I'm gonna put a pin there. Now you're gonna go to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you've stitched on your fly, you're gonna go ahead and make sure that your seam allowance is facing the fly, and you're going to understitch as far as you can possibly go. Okay, so I have gone ahead and understitched. Now we're gonna go ahead and attach our zipper. So what you're gonna do now is you're gonna take your zipper tape, and as you can see here, I have turned under the very top of the zipper tape, and I went ahead and stitched just to secure it. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna place it about 1/8 of an inch below your dot, okay, that you have here at the very top. And you want this side of the zipper to extend past your seam line 1/4 of an inch, okay? So that's what I'm gonna sort of eyeball here, and I'm gonna pin. So just lift and take a look, see where it is. Now you can pin in the center of the tape because we're actually stitching on this side. But I just want to make sure that I'm extending my zipper tape past that seam line by at least 1/4 of an inch. Now you guys know I always buy extra large zippers. I don't know, I just finds it easier to move the zipper pull out of the way as I'm working. And then I can just trim that off at the end when I'm done. So now that I have it taped, what you're gonna do now is we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch on this side of our zipper tape, okay? Make sure again that your zipper pull is facing down, right? You're looking at the wrong side of your zipper. Okay, go ahead and turn your fly to the inside. And now what we're gonna do is on the other side, okay, now on the other side, you're going to go ahead and press under 3/8 of an inch. Okay, once you've pressed the edge, you're gonna go ahead and open up your zipper. Let me adjust here for a second. I'm gonna open my zipper. And now we're going to go ahead and place the folded edge close to our zipper, okay? So just like that. Now you make sure you're not covering your zipper, make sure you're not covering the teeth, you're just sort of right up along the edge there. And I'm gonna pin a couple of times just to keep it in place. And I like to just test it. So what I do is I pin it in place, making sure I can zip it after. And then I like to check to make sure that the zipper itself is going to be aligned. So if I close my zipper now, so I like to pin it in place to make sure before I stitch it down that this seam line is lined up. Once it's lined up, you can go ahead, open your zipper back out, and you're going to go to your machine and you're going to edge stitch. You're going to edge stitch along the entire front end. Okay, so now we're going to take our underlap, and just so you know, I've done a stitching line 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge, just so that I can use it as a guide so that I know exactly where to place my zipper teeth. So I'm going to take my facing and I'm going to fold it down. And we're going to go ahead and place our underlap behind everything. We're going to stitch through all layers. So I'm placing my zipper teeth just past that line that I've created for myself. This is just a guide to help me see exactly where I need to place my zipper teeth and just to make sure that it's even all the way down. And then you're just gonna pin, and you're gonna pin till you get all the way down to the dot. Okay, now go to your sewing machine and you're gonna sew through all layers. Now if you have, let's say some bulky stuff here up at the top, depending on what fabric you're using, you can trim some of that at the seam before you do this. If not, then you're just gonna go ahead and stitch along your existing stitching line through all layers. Okay, so you should have this underlap stitched down, okay? You can see I removed a lot of that bulk just from trimming into the seams. And I have my fly pinned. And what you're gonna do now is you're going to top stitch. So you could use your fly as a guide, like your pattern piece as a guide. I just sort of eyeball it. So you could also mark it with like a water soluble pen so that you can follow it as you go down and around to create that curve. Make sure that your underlap is completely out of the way so that you can top stitch, catching your fly but not your underlap. All right guys, once you have that stitched down, the only thing left for us to do is to finish the inseam of our jumpsuit and then obviously our hems. So I'm going to turn this wrong side out. I'm going to go ahead and pin first at my crotch, making sure that I align those seams. And if your zipper tape is long the way mine is, you can just trim it. And now I'm going to go ahead and just pin along my entire inseam. Okay, now go to your sewing machine, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna start at one hem and you're gonna stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna stitch all the way until you get to the center, to the crotch. And then I like to start again at the hem on the other side and work my way, meeting back up at the crotch. All right guys, once you finish your inseam, the only thing left for you to do is to try it on, See if you like where the hem is gonna fall. You can turn under your hem allowance, stitch it down, and you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that sew along. Make sure and follow on Instagram if you're not following already at Mimi G Style and at Sew It Academy. Until next time, peace.